Hi, this is Liz. And both Cassie and I work on educational projects and for IGES. And we would like to introduce you to our newest product. This is the Mission Mosquito Larvae Hunters Guide. And it's a resource that's designed to be used with the Globe Observer to enhance learning. And why did we develop this? Well, it's pretty simple because right now, somewhere in the world, a mosquito is biting a human. And most people are familiar with this phenomenon. Even you've undoubtedly observed it or probably even experienced it. But what do people of any age know about this phenomenon? So as with anything, it generates questions, and we want students and citizen scientists to ask questions about that phenomenon. So what are the causes of that? What are the impacts of that bite? Why is it a worldwide phenomenon, and what environmental factors influence it? Because we know that investigating, first of all, generating questions and then investigating those questions is what science is all about. And that's what leads to new understandings about what we're learning and what we have yet to learn. And so that's kind of where we modeled this whole project. We want to start by investigating mosquitoes and the phenomena associated with them and the questions that they inspire. But where do you find the background information and the ideas to get started? Where do you direct your kids to start looking and start getting some information? Could all of this work to spark an IVSS investigation? Yes, of course it could. So we are going to give you some more of that information. It's going to start with the Mission Mosquito Larvae Hunters Guide. We chose the Mission Mosquito Larvae Hunters as the title just to kind of set the tone, because the hunters is a very popular theme and hunting throws in a bit of a challenge. And so it's intended to support both citizen scientists and students in their efforts to find mosquito larvae, to observe them, to identify them, to investigate them, and then to submit the data that they gather about them, ultimately, again, leading to an IVSS project. The power of this resource as a learning and teaching tool is its flexibility. It's in a Google slide format, so there's a variety of ways to use it, from displaying it on a whiteboard and working off of that whiteboard with the kids, to downloading it and having the kids work independently with it. So it can be done in a classroom, it can be done in an after-school science club, it can be done in a homeschool setting, an informal venue. It has lots of potential. And ultimately, it's providing an engaging pathway to learning the biology and the behaviors of mosquitoes and building confidence in using the Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper tool. This guide follows a logical instructional and learning sequence. So if we look at the table of contents, first thing they're going to do is meet the mosquitoes, and that's where we start. It's an introduction to the organism. It provides 11 activities that include things for the kids to do, and diagrams to examine, and explanations and questions to answer about the structures and the function of those structures. And it even, importantly, it reveals the characteristic behaviors that increase the mosquito's odds of reproduction, which is the name of the game. And it talks about biting to get the blood. And we even introduce then the proboscis, the mouth parts that are so important to that whole process. Then we go into the next section, which is on finding mosquitoes. So they use their biology and they use those skills that they just learned to find larvae and to find adults. There are 6 activities here that lead to discovering the environmental factors and the human contributions to the places where they lay their eggs. So we use images created by a graphic artist and the kids examine those to get started on identifying places. And then they're going to go out into the background and observe in the field. You've got to get out into the field to observe mosquitoes and gather data. We include safety precautions in here as well, but we use these activities to have them get out in the natural environment and collect data. We include a video and instructions for creating a mosquito trap. So they have their own trap where they can set it out and monitor and examine that. And then go ahead and collect some data that address those phenomena, the causes, the impacts, the worldwide engagement of this and the environmental factors, and then use it. If you've reached this step where you're gathering and starting to examine your data, but you've reached this step at a time when mosquitoes are not present in your local environment, or you wish to include more data in your research, we have over 37,000 observations already in the database, and you can analyze and interpret that data, your own data, combine those to reach a conclusion. So, in concluding here, the Mission Mosquito Larvae Hunters Guide focuses on a phenomenon that we observe, we hear as it's buzzing around us, we feel it when it bites us, and it routinely happens on a warm day in our local environment. Because in fact, right now, somewhere in the world, a mosquito is biting a human. The Larva Hunters Guide encourages students to investigate that phenomenon and supports them in investigating it.
Let's take a look at where we can start looking at the data. In the appendices of the Larvae Mission Mosquito Hunters Guide A6 Storytelling with Graphs, we're going to click that and it'll take us right to the page. Do you still have your data from your work with the mosquito trap that you built? Because you did gather some data on the number of eggs, larvae, pupa, and adults in and around your trap, as well as the air temperature of your trap set over several days. Now, if you don't have your own data, that's not a problem, because we'll take a look at some data that I collected in my trap during July. It's on page 89 in the Larva Hunters Guide. As you can see, as I was observing my trap, I recorded temperatures in the low 90s for the first few days. There was no eggs observed, larvae, pupa, or adults, and so in those columns I placed 0, and 0 is an important number. Starting on July 5th, on my 5th day, I counted 3 larvae. In day 6 I counted 5, and for the next week there were more and more larvae, and I was pretty excited to have this to count. I recorded the numbers of each that I saw in the appropriate column. So let's turn these numbers into a story for analysis. The data you collected will be displayed as a bar graph. A bar, or a column graph, is most frequently used to compare different groups of data. For this example, our graph will show the number of eggs, larvae, pupa, and adults counted over 2 weeks from our trap. Let me emphasize, you can use any spreadsheet program. They should all provide similar tools to graph your data. And if you're a trainer or facilitator, if you follow these steps, your participants will have their own bar chart that's comparing 2 groups to use later. For this example, it's the data that I collect. My example data set was collected over 2 weeks, and I checked it daily, so I have a date. I also have the number of eggs, larvae, pupa, and adults that I counted, and the air temperature is also recorded in Fahrenheit. I've opened up an Excel spreadsheet. You can use a Google Sheet, numbers, or anything else. They all work in a very similar fashion. And I need to create my columns of data. In my first column, I'll put date, second column, eggs, larvae, pupa, in the 5th column, the number of adults, and in the 6th column, the temperature. I've done that ahead of time for you to see. Next, I'm going to click and drag to highlight cells A1 to E15. This is the data that I want to put in column chart. So then I go to Insert, Chart, Column. I now have a chart that looks like this. I'll make it just a touch bigger by grabbing a corner so you can see it. The graph story tells us the following: that something happened on certain days, that something had a value, and that it involved eggs, larvae, pupa, and adults. Now, to make this graph story more informative, let's clarify a few things. How about the vertical and horizontal axis? They need some explanation. So when my chart is active, and I can see that it's active by the dots on the side, I can click on Chart Design. I can click on Chart, Axis Titles, and I'm going to choose Primary Horizontal. What information is showing on the horizontal? Each of those represents a day. So I can put, I'm going to insert Axis Titles, Horizontal, and those axis title is Date of Observation. What about the vertical axis? At this point, would the person across the room from you know what 0 to 20 means? Probably not. So let's again make sure the chart is active. Click on Add Chart Element, Axis Titles, and this is the primary vertical. And that would be the number of. Now, would a chart title be a good title for this particular chart? Let's make it something descriptive. I only had one mosquito trap out, so let's call it Mosquito Trap 1. Perfect. Nice job. I think we have a great mosquito trap story coming along, and we've answered a few questions. For example, the graph shows that throughout the 2 weeks, I collected data daily. Finding mosquito eggs is pretty challenging to the naked eye because they can be as small as a grain of pepper. It was difficult and impossible to see anything until the 5th day when I saw mosquito larvae. In the water, I observed over 2 weeks, and I saw and counted 3 larvae on the 5th day. Is there more to tell from the data? I'm sure there is. Questions such as, how long did it take for mosquito larvae to emerge between each stage? How long does it take for them to mature? By checking my trap daily, I can observe and measure the average length of the life cycle at that water or that temperature. Make sure that maybe you have more than one trap set up. Maybe put traps in different locations. In summary, recapping what both Liz and I have shared with you, the Mission Mosquito Larvae Hunters Notebook provides questions, background information, methods, field and classroom research opportunities, and data analysis. You can take all of these components and put them together to make your own IVSS submission.